have impoverished and hurt our country.
Unending string.
Unending string. They would include Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and our inability to stop the Houthis, by the way, in Yemen, which exposes us as weak, and I grieve over that. So these are failures. You helped preside over some of them as a member of the Senate.
What failures, foreign policy failures, have I presided over?
Well, we were unable to beat Russia in the war that you supported against Russia. You've been spending the last 3 years telling us that Vladimir Putin is evil and we're going to beat him with other people's children, and 1 million of those kids are now dead. You've never apologized for that. That was a full failure.
By the way, look, the level of number of falsehoods you lay out just in one statement are rather
You haven't supported
stunning.
the war against Russia?
Are rather stunning. So the war against Russia was caused, which I have explained at great detail, by Joe Biden's weakness.
But you supported the war.
If you want to talk, we can talk Russia and Ukraine. I'm happy to talk about it.
Do you think that's been a success?
No, it's been an absolute disaster.
Okay, but you supported it. Shouldn't you apologize?
No, you should apologize. I'm not going to engage in the demanding of apologize. So I'm like,
that's my point. Is all these failures and no one ever says I'm sorry?
Matter, or do you just throw out if you want to talk, we can talk.
Okay, I do. I want to know why that seems like a true disaster for the United States.
Ted Cruz lost it. He buried himself. He proved he didn't know anything about Iran. He doesn't know anything about Ukraine. He just follows the script that his donors tell him. And because they're losing in Ukraine, they decided we'll just blame that all on Biden, pretend like we weren't enthusiastically supporting it the whole time. And it's the same thing with Afghanistan. 20 years fighting the Taliban to put the Taliban in charge and leave behind $85 billion worth of stuff. Oh, yeah, that was Biden too. And it was Biden, but it wasn't only Biden. Ted Cruz supported all of this. That started all the way back with Bush the Lesser. We saw the results in Libya. He supported that war. And we saw the results in both the Iraq wars. Ted Cruz supported war against Iraq. And he supported Al-Qaeda in Syria. And it's been nothing but disaster. And then we get to Yemen and we get to Iran. So I think he buried himself by going on with Tucker Carlson. He thought, we'll send Ted Cruz because that's one of their best. That's how bad. That's like they have no depth. These people are trying sophistry on indefensible positions. They cannot articulate a rational position or a reason for what they do, because what they do is obey Israel's demands. Israel is run by psychotic lunatics that think God granted them land and that they get to annex territory and murder all the native inhabitants, expand into neighboring countries for greater Israel. That's the project they're on. That's what the war in Iran's about. And I got into it. I'm going to let you listen to the Hasbara, but what I'll do is I will pause and intervene because they never allow conversation on Mario Spaces. So without further ado, let's go.
Part of his mindset also when he was making agreements with Jolani in Syria. And I think that if you look at the signs, if we look at
the person talking is a Zionist harpy, by the way, who thinks Zionism, saying Zionist, is a slur.
Raiders that 17 fuel jets of the American Air Force took off from the UK to the Middle East. When you want to make a threat on Khamenei, you bring 7 planes. You don't bring 17 of those. I mean, the United States, this is 17 planes out of 24. So this is not just an empty threat. But I will finish with that. As an Israeli, I really prefer the United States not to get involved in this war. And I will explain why. Every day in the space sit-rep, we talk about the possibility of proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis are getting involved in this. And I think the equation on the ground will change drastically as soon as the United States will enter this entire story. And if there is anything we learned from Iraq, I don't think, even for US people, that it would make sense for them to get into this Middle Eastern mud right now. I think Israel is doing a great job. And the only thing that needs to be done is the US administration just not get in the way. This is my opinion as an Israeli. I want to be independent from the United States, not in the diplomatic arena, but definitely when it comes to decision making and calling shots on the ground. And in that point specifically, maybe Myron and I resonate.
So let me ask Matt.
Can I respond to this? Because she made a lot of accusations against me. If I could respond.
Okay, quickly, because I have a question for Matt in the intelligence.
This space did not record the beginning when I first came on, and he asked me if Trump is a neocon, because I run anti-neocons, and I went over it saying, listen, Trump, well, go in like the biographic definition of a neocon, he's not, but he listens to him and he obeys their ideology. This war is not about preventing a nuclear bomb. There are the stated reasons, and then there are the actual reasons. The stated reasons is we got to get them over there before they get us here. Can't let the smoking gun be a mushroom cloud, the same rhetoric they had on Iraq. So he'll say, well, we can't, don't you agree? We can't let Iran have the bomb. That's putting the cart before the horse, because they didn't have the bomb. And you knew they didn't have the bomb. And they did reach an agreement. And then you said, well, not that agreement. They went down to 3.6% enrichment of uranium. You said, oh, no, because the Israelis came in and said, that's not good enough. Make it 0. And get rid of their ballistic missiles and disarm and surrender. Just making higher and higher demands. And like during the negotiation process, they preemptively strike Iran without providing any evidence that there's a bomb or the ability to build a bomb. They are not at 90% enrichment. The highest they ever went was 60, which they bargained away. They were willing to go down to 3.6, 20 for medical isotopes. They had that deal with Witkoff. But the whole thing we found out was a farce, because they were using the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, to go in and spy on Iran so they could figure out the locations of all the facilities and the nuclear scientists and then blow them up. And blow up the scientists as well. They assassinated them. What this war is actually about, that's the pretext, WMDs. What it's really about is dismantling Iran so that they can remove any resistance. Houthi Hezbollah, who gets support from Hezbollah, who gets support from Iran. They want to remove any resistance to Israeli hegemony. They want to allow Israel to annex Palestine, annex the rest of the West Bank, annex a piece of Lebanon, annex more of Syria, which they've already done. They're already annexing Palestine and Syria, pieces of it. They don't want any physical resistance to challenge them for their regional hegemony. They want greater Israel. And if Iran is removed, as they already had Iraq removed, already got Libya removed, already got Syria removed, Iran is next. It isn't coincidence that after Iraq, Syria, Libya, by total chance, now Iran's 5 minutes away from making a nuclear weapon. No. Iran that was part of the script. They've planned this out for more than 25 years. They've been saying Iran's 6 months away from a bomb since at least 9/11, really since the mid-90s. They actually wrote it down. Iran is next. And they needed some sort of pretext. So the pretext they went with was this ooga booga scare tactic of, well, they were going to give a nuke to Yemen. They were going to nuke the United States. As Mark Levine had a meltdown saying they're going to nuke America. They don't even have anything that can reach America, much less, and they don't have a nuclear bomb either. But apparently they're going to nuke America. And then they said also they're still going with, they tried to assassinate Donald Trump. Because a guy in New York that cavorted with 2 criminals had been to Iran. He's from Afghanistan, by the way. He's not even Iranian. Had nothing to do with the Trump shooting either. It wasn't in Pennsylvania. It wasn't in Florida. But they're going to assassinate the president. And Trump's making threats not only against Khomeini, but he's making threats against Tehran, the whole capital. I wouldn't live there if I was you. Someone needs to take his phone away. So that's some of the stuff that was said before the recording started. And the responses were you could feel the pain in the kvetching. But let's continue.
But please quickly, Myron.
Sure.
No, not against you, against your
Yeah,
argument.
that's fine. No, because you've made a point to always challenge everything I say, so that's fine. So number one, I never said Israel is destroyed. I said it is being.
Oh, by the way, yeah, Myron said it's being destroyed. Another thing that was said before was some guy named Matt, total Hezbollah troll. They tried to claim like, well, I don't want to get into a history lesson because I said, well, they're annexing Palestine. He brought up basically admitting, yeah, it's not over nuclear weapons. This is over regime change. Somebody else was being pedantic going, it's over leadership change. Whatever. They need somebody complacent to Israel. He admitted, yeah, we don't want Iran promoting these terrorist groups, the Houthi, Hamas, and Hezbollah, and that's what that's about. And I pointed out that the Houthis didn't exist till the 1990s. Hamas and Hezbollah didn't exist until the 1980s, and Hezbollah was created as a reaction to Israel's wars in Lebanon and the Beirut bombing and so on. And Hamas was created as a reaction to a 37-year occupation at that point. It didn't have power until 2005. That was not, but Israel's been ethnically cleansing its neighbors since 1948. There was no rebuttal. They're just like, oh, we don't want to get into history. We don't want to get into history. I'm like, of course you don't. You don't even want to get into yesterday. They bombed Palestinians trying to get food. 64 of them dead. Like, oh, I haven't seen that report. Like, yeah, of course not. This is why they don't want to have dialogue. They usually have midwits in there and they gang up on them and stuff. I get in, and you know what happens? And you'll see this. As soon as I start pushing back, like, hey, well, I will remove people. Like, oh, yeah, I know. So that was some more that was missed, but here we go.
Destroyed, okay? That's relative, because remember, Israel's a country that's never been hit this hard by a foreign power in the Middle East, okay? They're typically the ones that have the capabilities of blowing people up. Number two, journalists in Haifa were encountered by...
Let me say what Myron said, because that wasn't caught in the recording either. So Myron got on, kind of reiterated the Ritter point of view of, well, look, they're way underground, and Israel's running out of defensive interceptors, and so it costs a lot more, per shot that Iran does is so much cheaper than the defensive shot. And so in a war of attrition, you're going to run out of money, you're going to run out of missiles before Iran does. But he kind of bought into this is about nuclear weapons or the potential nuclear weapons, and they need to drop, the B-52s need to go in there and bomb the mountain until they can reach it, and bought into their framing that they're going to war over a supposed nuke. They know they don't have nukes. But so he went into like the tactics and all, and he's not wrong about the tactics. It is more expensive to defend than it is. But like, it's the wrong frame. They know there's no nuke down there. They're after the ballistic missiles. They're after regime change. They want to destroy Iran's ability to resist Israel's ethnic cleansing and land annexation. It's not about the bomb. And he said Israel's getting destroyed, meaning their population isn't used to having to run to air raid shelters for real, because they would sit out there in lawn chairs and watch them destroy Palestine. This time they actually have some risk, and so they're freaking out. And so he was just going over the tactics of this air war and ballistic missile warfare. And someone's like, you said Israel's being destroyed. They're not. Israel's winning. Israel's winning everything. But they still need the United States to come in, and they're lying and saying Iran's going to nuke America. Okay, that was some more that unfortunately didn't make the recording, but here we go.
By police and forced to stop filming as the oil refinery was being blown up in Haifa. Third, free press, that's comical. Because at the end of the day, Al Jazeera's banned and international journalists are not allowed in Gaza. So this whole thing about freedom of the press or whatever, that's a lie. Again.
Now they're going to retort to that and say, well, you can't allow people to film Israel being hit because that's military information and Iran will know how successful their shot. They're going to know anyway. And these, whatever. So, but completely avoided the other half of the statement that Myron made saying, and international journalists aren't allowed in Gaza. Why? Because you guys are putting on Telegram yourselves, dancing around in people's houses that you stole, the ones that haven't been completely demolished, and stealing their stuff and rummaging through it and handcuffing people naked in the sand and, all the abuse, destroying graveyards, blowing up hospitals, blowing up food trucks, and shooting journalists, shooting medics. It's on film where, because a medic cell phone survived, or they just pulled over a couple of medics and of trucks, ambulances, and shot them dead. There was no firefight going on or anything like that. Just like, you're here to save people's lives. Bang, bang. Shit. Total war crimes. They don't allow journalists to cover it. And here's the thing. If you were to report these things in major mass media, you'd get fired. We just had Colonel McCormick, Nathan McCormick, fired because I'll read his statements in a second, but basically he went against the Israeli regime. And so they said, you can't do it. That's why Tucker, the most popular news show on cable television, it was making money. He's fired. Why? Because he went against their agenda. And so it's not about MIC profiteering. It's not about the media profiteering. It's about power. And he wasn't on message. So they need to replace him. The media is not there to make money. The media is there for social engineering so that they can lie to you and get these imperial escapades for Zionist psychopaths, these Satan worshiping antichrist lunatics that murder children for sport. So here's what McCormick said, and I'll give you his bullet points, and then we'll get back to the space. Netanyahu and his Judeo-supremacist cronies are determined to prolong the conflict for their own goals, either to remain in power or to annex land. Guys, he sounds like me. The next one. Israel's actions over decades have prompted the accusations of ethnic cleansing and genocide. Yeah, because it is. It's definitely ethnic cleansing. They've been doing that for generations, and they're currently in the middle of a genocide. The Western states go on great lengths to avoid criticism of Israel, much out of Holocaust guilt. Woo, getting close to the sun there, Icarus. That's true, though. They'll always be like, well, the Holocaust, which has nothing to do at all with Palestinians. I would argue the modern day Holocaust is the starvation, collective punishment, and murder of people in Palestine. McCormick continues, our worst ally. We get literally nothing out of the partnership other than the enmity of millions of people in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. I always say the only thing Israel gives us is more demands. And McCormick goes on, the U.S. has not been an honest broker. We have overwhelmingly enabled Israel's bad behavior. Bravo, this guy's a G. I think they removed his account on X too. Like, this guy should have millions of followers, his own podcast, Nathan McCormick. Colonel McCormick, if you're out there, if you hear this, we will support you. I'll have you on this show, and many others will have you on their show. And if you start something, we will follow. And he continues some more. Responding to the idea of relocating Gaza's population, McCormick wrote that Israel wants to expel them and cleanse Eretz Israel, Greater Israel, of ethnic Palestinians. Well, they do. Well, they can just go somewhere else. Why don't they go to Jordan? Why don't they go to Egypt? Why do they have to go anywhere? Well, they have to go somewhere because you'll murder them if they don't. And you're blaming them. Well, you should have left. If you had left, I wouldn't have killed you. And they can't leave. They physically cannot leave. It's like, oh yeah, just not have a home, leave your job, your work, everyone you know, your house, your business. Just leave it all behind and start over somewhere else in another country. Because if you don't, we'll murder you and your kids. And lastly, since June 2024, he also called Israel a death cult. Well, he's not wrong. Props to Nathan McCormick, G of the week. Nathan McCormick. Proud of the Irish heritage, McCormack, excuse me, McCormack. Keep saying Mick, it's usually a Mick. McCormack is a G. Back to the space.
I'm not saying Israel's destroyed. I'm saying they've dealt with a considerable amount of damage compared to the damage they incur on others because they never get hit. That was my point.
Okay.
Well, I urge you to search for pictures from the Saddam Hussein.
I was literally about to
with
use the
Israel.
Saddam Hussein example during the 1991 Gulf War. But hold on. I really want to, Matt.
The
I
example
would
of what does that?
Saddam Hussein, 1991 Gulf War, ballistic missile strikes against Israel.
Oh, okay, bro. I'm talking about like I'm not talking like 30, 40 years ago. I'm talking.
I don't know if he knows, but like that is in the Frank Luntz playbook. Like, what about that one time when pictures got out because Scud hit inside of Israel? That was the whole thing. It wasn't babies on incubators or his invasion of Kuwait. No, it's because Saddam supported Palestinians and was within range and ability to tag Israel with Scud missiles. So this is when the Patriot system comes in, like a commercial with Brent Scowcroft and da-da-da-da-da. And you notice Saddam fired at Israel and Saudi Arabia. He knew exactly the Zionist, Salafist, Wahhabi partnership there of Jewish supremacists and Islamic supremacists. He knew the same people that attacked us in 9/11, those two. He knew what was up. And he just set the oil on fire. He's like, you're not coming in here to finish the job. And Bush Sr. knew it would create a quagmire. He knew what a mess it would be. And his son went in there and did it anyway. They dragged him in. And they used the lie of weapons of mass destruction in that war too. But the original Gulf War, they'll point to and go, well, not all journalists were killed. Because remember that time in 1991? In 1991, 30 years ago, that one time they showed vulnerability. Eat a dick.
Like in this, within the past 10 to
Thanks for
15.
reminding everybody that 1991 was 40 years ago or 30 years ago. I appreciate it. That's
I'm talking about now.
No,
I'm talking
I
like
know
recent history.
Okay. God, man, you're making us all feel old. Come on, man. Come on. 1991 was not that long ago. It's still considered recent history. All right, I'll die on that hill. Okay, so Matt, I need to ask you this question. Okay, so this rings something similar to what we saw the CIA do against Russians and against Chinese, right? We've seen this type of messaging that has happened before, and it is. So I'm just going to kind of read it. The IDF, in their Persian language statement, tells Iranians to consider contacting the Mossad. And basically, so in Farsi, they
I want you to notice how he deflected with a joke, like, oh, we feel old, and then goes right to Matt. They don't address what Myron said about not allowing international journalists in, or that Haifa got tagged, or anything. They're just like, oh, he starts stuttering and makes a joke, goes to Matt, and this is what they do. They'll cycle through like 5 or 6 people. You say a sentence of rebuttal in any portion of what they said. It's like, oh, and then they get a long 5-minute reply to you, and then you don't get to reply to them. This is how these spaces are on Mario Zio space.
told them, dear citizens of Iran, we understand your difficult situation and the harsh conditions created by the regime. In recent days, we have received many messages who are worried about this current uncertain future. Even those who identify themselves as members of the regime security institution has expressed to us their fear, despair, and anger over what is happening in Iran, and have asked us to contact Israeli authorities so that Iran does not suffer the same fate as Lebanon and Gaza. At this point, it is necessary to clarify that we are not appropriate authority for such requests, but the least we can do is to refer you through the links to the Mossad website. Matt, do you think that do you think that this is kind of a falls within the realm of information warfare, psychological operations to kind of continue this messaging of Mossad operating freely in Iran? Or do you think this is an actual attempt similar to what we saw with the CIA and Russia and China to try to see if they can get more spies, and maybe that is helpful? What do you think this is an effective strategy?
It's actually a very effective strategy, and it's used all the time, not just in the examples you gave, but in every single war. In every single war, you have things like this that are happening. If you look between Israel and Ukraine, or I'm sorry, between Ukraine and Russia, these things are happening on both sides. As far as information operations and intelligence gathering, yeah, obviously it is a good attempt at intelligence gathering, and they likely, brought that up, not just for the intelligence aspect, but also the psychological operations aspect. If they are openly putting that out and they put that word out in the community, and there's a big distinction here that needs to be made when we start talking about this. When people view war, right, a typical conventional war, nation on nation, as you look at it, in one way, on a battlefield in the trench line. So, Russia versus Ukraine is a good example. Warfare on the front line, you're talking about numbers, bodies, physical terrain, pushing lines forward and back. That's one aspect of warfare. Another aspect of warfare, and the things that we're talking about, and whether or not you want to call it a regime change or a leadership change, at the end of the day, you're also talking about people. And those same people that are over inside of Iran, the 92 million people inside of Iran, also are the ones that filled in the ranks of the IRGC, the Iranian military, Navy, whatever have you, right? So those are those same people. And what your goal is here, as a lot of people have pointed out, Iranian military is very big. And so if you can start convincing those people on the human terrain aspect, because that is the difference here, the military on military strikes, like what you're seeing here with direct air to ground engagements, versus the human terrain aspect is another very important aspect. The more people you can get to defect, and the more people you can get to give up information, the more of these talks you can actually get going, really does affect that conventional aspect that everybody typically thinks about in warfare. So that message that you just read off is dual pronged in so many ways, and it's important for people to understand that.
Piotr, I know you just joined us. You haven't had a chance to speak. I do want to give deference to the co-host. I mean, Piotr, we had 12, 13 hour space. I don't even know how long. It was a long one. I want to give you an opportunity to see if you have any comments and anything you've seen. It looks like the UK is hosting a Cobra meeting. So what do you think that means for the rest? And do you think the UK is considering measures to take place in the Middle East to include, they've also evacuated diplomats in in Israel?
Yeah, look, the UK is making precautionary steps as every country is, from China to the French to the Turks. Even I think have made some moves, right? So I think every country is making contingency plans for something potentially worse. Cobra meetings, from my understanding, can be as much about domestic issues externally or external issues on internal matters.
We got some circle chats. One from Dial Up Chronicles slaps in a dead Lincoln, says, "Thanks for all that you do. Thank you for the dead Lincoln." And one from Defiant Dissident pulls in an Andrew Jackson and says, "Fuck Israel." Fully agree. Keep them shekels flowing. We're also on Entropy. If you prefer Entropy over Rumble, you can get in there. Link is in the chat. So they're asking about Britain now, and they are taking precautionary measures. Why wouldn't they? This guy's okay. But let's continue.
If that makes sense in this case, the situation in the Middle East and its impact on British citizens, but of course the proximity to Cyprus and the two bases there, they are incredibly important. This is why Cyprus has been such a strategic location. It's been, nicknamed the unsinkable aircraft carrier, and it has been previously threatened by, I think it was the Syrian, not the rebels, the Assad's regime during during the events in December. So yeah, the British are going to be quite busy on that. Everyone's back from the G7 as well. But on what's been said, I mean, look, I've just released a video on my channel about, is this about regime change or is it about what's the word, managing the nuclear program? I don't think there is appetite enough for regime change, even if you do, unless Israel is incredibly well placed to do this completely on their own. I don't see there being enough appetite amongst other countries to do so. We know the historical implications of unprecedented regime change in other countries. And whilst you can argue, this time it could be different, one always worry that, if you start a war, that's fine, but you know how to end it. And this is different to a ground operation because it's aerial only, but you can still end up in a unintended quagmire. And so, I don't support Iran's ability to get a weapon, but equally, I think going whole hog to regime change is always precarious. That's my opinion. Of course, there are those who can argue it's possible. There are reports that Khamenei is already making contingency plans to run away to Russia, much like Bashar al-Assad. They'll probably have some kind of, dictator pad in the sort of downtown parts of Moscow or something. So like an Olympic Village. So yeah, I think that we will have to wait on that, and I feel that it only serves so much of a purpose. It's better to focus on developments that are more immediate, namely America's involvement or not. And also because if America gets involved, then that does change the dynamic significantly, and whether or not that means a regime change is actually possible.
I just wanted.
I was reading one. Yeah, go ahead, Myron. I was going to ask you a question actually, but go
Yeah,
for it,
so
and then I'll
I
come to
went
you.
ahead and posted up in the nest, and I apologize, I'm not that good at it, but that's some footage of Israeli police telling journalists to shut it down when they were trying to document one of the Iranian strikes. Look, I'm not saying Iran's kicking Israel's ass. What I am saying is that Iran has caused a significant amount of damage, but it's just that it's not getting reported because Israel is working to suppress the information, right? And as is Iran. I'm not disputing the fact that Iran's trying to do it too. It's war. People are trying to, keep their armies with high morale. They're trying to get the people to not freak out. So censoring certain things going on is just going to have to be a reality of modern warfare since everyone's walking around with a smartphone in their pocket.
Well, Myron, if you don't mind, can I answer back to this real quick, guys? So
Explain
appreciate
to
it.
him why.
Yeah. So it's not that they're trying to suppress information because the Israeli like, believe me, Myron, they can look up in the sky. They're hiding in the bunker. They're well aware of the threats that they currently face, and of all people that know what's happening, it's the people that are on the ground that have things that are exploding around them. And it doesn't have anything to do with them attempting to make the people feel safer or trying to suppress information. And maybe it does actually. So I'll use your term. What they're trying to do is they're trying to suppress the amount of information that Iran is directly able to see immediately following those strikes. So Israel also shut off the CCTV cameras over inside of the major urban areas as well. And what they're trying not to do, because these are ballistic missiles being fired away, and I understand there's other ways for Iran to gather this information. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to make it harder on Iran for getting it. And what you don't want to do is supply spotters via social media, because those videos and that information of on the ground footage from up close shows Iran where those strikes are actually taking place at. Now, Iran likely has plenty of intelligence assets confirmed over inside of Israel. They've been caught before, et cetera. But they have intelligence assets on the ground, but they're not everywhere. And that's the thing about the 21st century and warfare within the 21st century is this battlefield is changing and it's shaping in a different way.
I agree. And so here's
Right.
my thing. So I think we both
Myron,
still
if I
came
can
to
just
the
jump
same.
in with some news. Sorry, and I'll let you go. Let me
right.
go with some news.
All right.
This is brought by CBS News. Israel has told people that they have the ability to, and this is something actually Yehuda I think was alluding to, or I mean multiple times in the space and voice as well. But Israel has told people they have the ability to go ahead on their own with the strategy against Iran's nuclear effort, and left it up to the White House on whether they join. This is per CBS News. The specific journalist is Jennifer Jacobs.
Well, I
Myron, go
wanted
ahead.
to
So,
ask you about that sit rep. Do they have the capability to take out for now themselves? I was reading one report that they might well do. For now, sorry,
I mean,
Sleepy.
they
Do they have the
100%
ability?
don't. They 100% don't.
okay. Let
I
me put it
actually
this
would
way.
agree with
No,
that.
you can't say that.
I would agree with that.
This is what I would say. If let me put it this way: if this was a one-day operation, probably not. But I'm not saying. Look, Iran.
So can I get
Let me
Yeah,
just respond real quick.
people are paying attention?
let me put it this way. Let me push it to you because I know you really hit this point earlier. So I'm going to push this to you. This is the only point I'll say, and I'll let DQ expand. We have been at this 5-6 days now, and Iran has only shot down one Israeli drone that was not even a stealth drone. It was just a normal, like a equivalent to the MQ-9. With that much freedom of operation, Yehuda, I think they can eventually destroy it because I mean time is kind of on Israel's side at this point.
Can I real quick just
Right.
respond to Matt?
And
Because
no,
hold on.
let me
Because
yeah,
me and Matt were
geez.
going back and forth first. I'm just gonna say this point and just end it there. Matt, I agree, right? Like we're both coming to the same conclusion. You're coming from the strategic perspective of you don't want counterintelligence to see what's getting hit. I'm coming from the perspective of Israel trying to maintain a certain image, but we're both correct. The only difference is you have a different reasoning for why you think it's happening or why you're prioritizing. But the point is that they are making efforts to suppress images and video getting out publicly. That's the bottom line. Whether
All right.
we can debate
So
why, but the bottom line is we're both right on that.
It's funny because when they do intercept missiles, whether it's over Jordan, Israel, whatever, that's also valuable military data, but they let that out because it's good news. It's such a crock. Israel shoots journalists. They've killed more journalists than anyone in modern times.
yeah, so
And they're doing a bad job because there's like media live streaming from Israel inside Israel.
Yeah. All right, so what for people who are not in the military, maybe this is the part that's confusing, Myron. You don't understand that a video or a picture of an impact crater or the damage to a building that is near, say, sensitive facility, that is intelligence. That is actionable intelligence.
I'm not disputing that.
For Israel's enemy. So the reason why they went to the reporters and said stop filming is because they don't want any post-attack, any BDA assessment there that Iran could refine its targeting techniques. That's the bottom line. It's not a debate here. Matt nailed it. Everyone in Israel knows what's going on, and I can promise you the Israeli government doesn't care what you or I think about how they're doing.
Yehuda,
So let's get to the question. I want to.
You're being pedantic now. You're being pedantic.
I'm not being pedantic.
You definitely are.
Okay. So as you always talk about impulse control. Let's focus here. The permissiveness of the airspace that Israel's flying in. Sitrep nailed it. If Israel had one kick at the can, yeah, B2 all the way. But I want to just give simple understanding here. I had to Google, and I had to go check some of my notes here. The smallest JDAM is about 250 kilos. The largest is about 950. That's what the B2 drops. Now, if Israel is able to drop 50 or 100, 500 kilogram JDAMs on the same spot over and over again, They may not ever really penetrate Fordo, right? It's got dolomite, it's deep within a mountain, but they will make sure that no one can get in or out. Now, that's a 70% solution in the military. That's good enough. Also, people keep talking about, ground troops. No one's asking American ground troops to go in, but Israelis can clearly go in. If they can control the sky, they can do whatever they want there now. Guess what? Operation Orchard, when the nuclear reactor the Syrians had at Deir ez-Zor, the Israelis had special forces on the ground for weeks. And they had a contingency plan that if the airstrike failed, they would manually, command
The accused nuclear reactor. It was not a nuclear reactor in Deir ez-Zor.
detonate the reactor. So there are, I want to make it clear, I'm not a cheerleader. It's just very simple. Israel did not conduct this exercise. And by the way, it's not Netanyahu's exercise, not his operation. This is an operation the IDF has been planning for 15 plus years. They didn't plan it and then have a little caveat somewhere in coordinating instructions. By the way, hopefully the Americans get involved so we can actually achieve our objectives. That's not happening. Would the Americans end it a lot quicker? Absolutely, they would. But if you could continue.
Oh, yes. It's just a coincidence that America is negotiating with you about uranium enrichment and putting sanctions on Iran and pressure on Iran about that. And just so happened to be the case that acted as a pretext for the IAEA to go in and inspect Iran, which you used as spies so that you could target those facilities and assassinate scientists. Oh, that was just coincidence.
Continue to fly sorties over Fordo over and over and over again, including and adding the option of special forces injections, then they will achieve their objective. They don't require the states. I'm not sure it's a great idea. I don't know if it's worth the political capital. But lastly, I wanted to say something that Matt mentioned, talked about the psychological plane. So when in operational planning procedures in every single staff college in any country worth its salt, when commanders and joint operations are learning how to write operations that involve joint operations, air, sea, and land, there's the physical plane and then there's psychological plane, and often it's a throwaway thing. Psychological enemies morale is medium, and this is one of those cases where absolutely the psychological plane is an enormous component. The name of the operation, Lion Rising, all of this is meant to do something. The messaging that SITREP shared, I think he said it was from the Mossad. I'm sorry, I forget exactly what you said, SITREP, but all of that is meant to assist and augment the operation. It's not a little side note. It's a big deal. Now, there is no Al Jolani in the wings, right? We know that. But you have a Shah's son. You have a huge movement in the diaspora. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I will finish with what I said earlier. The Israelis clearly have made the decision.
I'm glad he just sort of admitted, like, yeah, there's no Jolani in the wings. Yeah, just pass Syria on to Al-Qaeda. It doesn't matter how bad Al-Qaeda is. They run around killing Christians and Alawites. It doesn't matter because they're not a threat to Israel. So it's okay to just destroy the nation of Syria and, effectively annex Rojava to the Kurds and just murder hundreds of thousands of people in a war, because then there's no land bridge to Hezbollah. And that's the point of toppling Syria. That's why the very first thing Al-Qaeda did in that war, ISIS went after air defense systems. Why would they do that? They don't even have an air force. What are they worried about air defense systems for? Because they knew, because they're working in coordination, if they took those out, then Israel can come in and bomb targets in Syria. And they exclusively attacked Assad. They never attacked ISIS because that's their team.
That it doesn't matter because anything is better than 50 nuclear warheads. Thanks, Rep. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, I have a question to you. Like, there's this report in the Washington Post. They said that Israel cannot maintain its military defense for 10 or 12 days if Iran maintains a steady tempo of attacks. So what do you think about those reports? Or someone else can respond to that?
Can I respond to that? Yeah, I mean,
I had my hand up the whole time, by the way. They're just having a little circle jerk, but okay, yeah. Don't get the guy on that's been talking about it for 30 years. Just get these Twitter historians, whatever.
Thing is that they're running out of interceptors.
No,
So
how can you respond to that? What are your credentials? I'm sorry.
Hold on.
Voice,
So
with all due respect, no one knows who you are. Okay, so just chill out.
I have 7.5 years experience with the IDF and in Israel's national security. That's way more than you have. I'm really
fantastic.
sorry to talk about interceptors.
Fantastic. You work for a terrorist organization. Congrats. Great.
So listen, guys, can we please stick to the dang facts here? Look, if he is technically correct, they can't keep it up forever, right? And that's without resupply. Okay. So when you take these statements and you put them in a vacuum like that, they are accurate. When you take them in a broader concept, which is Israel has the ability to get resupplied, then it's not an issue. I just saw a report, not that like literally this morning, that more interceptors just got delivered over to Israel this morning. So they can continue to get refit and resupplied. That's not an issue. That's not going to be an issue. It might be if this turns into a more prolonged conflict, it might be. But at the same time, Iran's got a limited supply of ballistic missiles. And I guarantee you the international community's got the ability to resupply Israel with the interceptors that they need, all right, in order to defend their skies over that duration of time
And Matt,
versus they run out.
what do you think, Matt, what do you think about Israel diversifying their engagement strategies or tactics? Like they're actually now shooting them down from those F-22s in Iran before they even get there, and they save an interceptor. I assume, I'm not an Air Force guy, but I assume the cost of those or that ordnance on a jet is cheaper than one of those interceptors.
Well, I don't think they're going by price or trying to conserve interceptors, but I think what you're actually looking at is it's much easier to take them out on the ground than it is to shoot them down out of the sky. You know, if I haven't seen it confirmed yet, but the claim was that Iran had shot the Pal-1 ballistic missiles yesterday, and that was their big surprise that they ended up coming out with. And it's actually, you know, like everybody on the Israeli or American side wants to joke about it. But those things fly at like Mach 13 to Mach 15. I mean, that's so insanely fast. It's not even funny, right? And they slow down as they begin to like come into the atmosphere. So you have this limited window for those interceptors to actually be able to hit them. And so by taking them over and actually targeting them to the best of their ability before they launch, it does two things. One, it guarantees that you're going to get a hit, right? If they're on the ground, they're stationary, pretty much guarantees that you're going to get a hit. That's first. Second, you know, Iran's ability to get through, because it does happen. And it's funny to me that people refuse to recognize this. And I've seen it on the Israeli side a lot. Our skies are perfectly secure, we're good, we're safe. And then you've got people over on the other side that are saying, no, Israel's defense system sucks. It's not that the defense system sucks, it's that it's technology and technology fails. And not to mention there's ways to defeat that technology. And Iran's way to defeat the technology is with their waves of these ballistic missiles that they're firing. Number one, as long as they have enough coming in one wave, they're going to be able to get some to bypass that system. Second, all right, those systems need to be reloaded over time once they shoot so many, and that also creates another window. So there's multiple aspects to that approach. If Israel actually continues to target them on the ground, it's going to greatly depreciate Iran's ability to get those ballistic missiles through and actually have impacts on Israeli territory. Further, knowing that they're going to take, they have to have X amount of ballistic missiles fired into the air in a single wave. If Israel starts attacking those waves before they get launched, then all of a sudden you create a no-go criteria for Iran, because conservation of those ballistic missiles is a very real thing. So they're not going to want to waste them. So you take out a couple of those launch sites, and all of a sudden Iran basically is going to conserve their ammunition so that they can reconsolidate, reorganize, and relaunch for an actual effective attack.
So, Voice, the question I have for you, though, Voice, is, I mean, I think the reporting of Israel running out of interceptors came from the Wall Street Journal earlier this morning. I mean, to be honest, I'm a little skeptical of that reporting, simply because this conflict.
Look at them throwing shade on that. The Houthis were able to tag Ben Gurion Airport by firing one missile. They didn't overwhelm. It wasn't a giant wave. They just fired one fast one. It went through everything and hit. They're shooting trash at Israel to deplete their defense systems so that their slower moving things can go in and do damage too. Their ballistic missiles are pretty much hitting at will. And here we have the Washington Post, and you got to see the mental gymnastics these people do about this report. And finally, you'll hear me speak for the first time. I get to say like 2 words, and they all flip out.
It just started.
Let me
go ahead,
Voice. Tell you. Yeah, it's a tactic. Okay, in my opinion. Okay, this is a tactic. I think that this was a planned leak of probably an Israeli source disguised as an American source. And I think it was meant to make the Iranian think that this is a matter of days. There is no way Israel would have gone out to this operation that the minimum time limit of it is 3 weeks, when it has interceptors that will be over in few days, especially when the anticipation in Israel of the home front command was a much greater amount of ballistic missiles than what we've seen so far. I think that this is a tactic that was meant to create some sort of end of an opportunity window with the Iranian regime, because if the Iranian regime will convince that Israel is about to stop the attacks within a couple of days because they are quote unquote running out of interceptors, it might make it expose more launchers, more infrastructures, or to cause a movement of forces out of the thinking that the window of opportunity is about to close. So basically, it also causes Iran to stop preparing such broader attacks, and I think we see that also in the last 24 hours, out of understanding that Israel will probably try to get a ceasefire if things doesn't go as planned. And I think that it's working really well, because if Iran will wait for a longer time to attack with broader amount of missiles in order not to miss the momentum, the international pressure will also grow on Israel. And this is what Iran is counting on as strategy. So I think this leak of this article is just a really well-planned strategy that is coordinated with the United States and with Israel. To be honest, I don't want to help the Iranians here, but this is my honest assessment.
Or it's just true.
Yeah.
Ryan, actually,
Yeah, I
Ryan,
think that report
one second. I think
is true.
President Trump is speaking live. I'm trying to see if this is happening. I'll break in if there's any major news. But Obey, go ahead and continue your point.
Look, it's a matter of physics. There's only a finite the interceptors for.
See, I wasn't even called on. I just butted in and said, or it's not a super secret plan. It's just true. And it go right to the next person. Like, why do you invite me then if I don't get to speak?
Or for medium range and long range ballistic missiles, there's only so many that the U.S. and that the Israelis built, because it's a matter of physics. It's extremely difficult to destroy. It's like shoot a bullet with a bullet, no matter how advanced your technology is. And, the U.S. was having the same issues with shooting down Houthi ballistic missiles being launched at U.S. Naval assets as well. And throughout history, really, the only surefire way to destroy an adversary's ballistic missile capabilities is to do it on the ground or to destroy their stockpile rather than just try to intercept them in the air. And I think this is, I do believe in the veracity of these reports coming out.
I'm just
even the U.S.
monitoring
had
the
two
situation
F-18s
with
going to
President
the
Trump.
drink.
If there's anything breaking, I'll let you know. Ryan, go ahead.
I was going to reiterate that, but he just made the same point. Even the U.S. lost a couple F-18s, not in the air, but off of carriers, challenging the Houthi. It is very hard to defend if you wait until it's right above the target. You need to hit the launchers while they're on the ground, or get them before they get out of the atmosphere, because then they speed up. And when they're about to land, they break into pieces and they put out decoys, and that's the hardest place to get it and the riskiest. So obviously they want to get air superiority and hit the launchers from the ground. I don't buy into this rhetoric about, well, they're trying to stop a nuclear bomb. They've been goading for this war, listed it, more than 20 years ago. I mean, since 9/11, they've listed the countries they wanted to take out.
96.
I think this is about getting. Yeah,
96,
96, the clean break. Sure, if you can go back to Oded Yanan in the 80s, but I'm just saying they literally wrote out a script in 2001. But this is about limiting Iran's capacity to support their proxy forces, which are resisting Israel's ability to annex land and ethnically cleanse their neighbors, which they'll call self-defense, but it's offense.
I'm just going to just put a little bit here. Hold on.
A weapon that could destroy 25 miles, but much more than that. It could destroy other nations just by the breeze blowing the dust. That dust blows to other nations and they get decimated. This is just not a threat you can have. And we've been threatened by Iran for many years. If you go back and look at my history, if you go back 15 years, I was saying...
He said, go ahead, Ryan, and then played a Trump clip in the middle of me speaking, and then wants people to respond to that except for me, right?
We cannot let Iran get a nuclear weapon. I've been saying it for a long time, and I mean it more now than I ever meant it. Yeah.
Question on deportations, Mr. President. Okay, I just wanted to share that piece that he said. I mean, I jumped in a little bit. He did reiterate his demand for Iran, basically saying what he posted on his True Social of unconditional surrender. So rhetoric wise, and now we're hearing it, the messaging from the White House is a switch to, and we kind of saw this, I think this was kind of some of the talking points were leaked that, President Trump has been consistent in his demands that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon and that they need to cease their nuclear programming. That's the messaging that this White House looks like it's going through. That's the talking points that they're pushing. I know.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Yep.
Yeah. So what I was going to say was,
He'll do anything to get the mic away from me. They Defiant Dissident for 20 says Jesse Waters reports that Trump approves attack plans against Iran. And in this space, I said, look, America's going to attack Iran. They will. It doesn't matter. MAGA all the way. He's going to alienate MAGA. He doesn't care. They got him compromised. He's over a barrel. Epstein. He's over a barrel. So here we go. We all knew it. I feel just like Iraq. You can point out all the lies. It doesn't matter. They're just going to do what Israel wants no matter what. And all these people are like, oh, they're going to make a deal. This is like an oil MIC. Shove it up your ass. America does what Israel commands. They run U.S. media. AIPAC. Everybody's got an AIPAC guy. President Trump is surrounded by Zionists. He's selected a bunch of Zionist Christians in his cabinet. How could you not see this coming? Once Syria was removed, so Hezbollah was isolated, but then the Houthi pick up the ball. So they go, well, we're going to take out Iran, and we can't. So we're going to have the U.S. do it. Here we go. America is going to go to war with Iran. Hooray. I'll play the rest of the space, and then I'm going to jump on to the current news.
what he's doing here, that's a professionally crafted thing. Like, oh, he's been, Charlie Kirk, Bonjean, Crowder, all these guys saying, oh, well, Trump's been talking about going after Iran's nuclear problem for 10 years, but they're missing the big point. Oh, hold on, guys. Hold on. Shit. My Wi-Fi cut out. Give me one sec.
You know what? I apologize because I don't see the hands, Matt. I only see yours. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, the administration has been really clear on it, right? We don't even have to go back 15 years. We could just take the present day administration. And let's just say there is a 50% chance that Iran could get a nuclear weapon. That's just not something that the West is willing to take. Russia, I don't believe, actually wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon. And when you have even a 50% risk that Iran could be developing one thing's for certain, right? We know that they have over 900 pounds of the 60+% enriched uranium that they're sitting on. Now, with that being said, what Trump just stated was the dirty bomb aspect, right? Like if this uranium actually gets hit, I think there's a lot of people that are concerned that if there is a large strike that directly hits these uranium stockpiles, it will cause a massive nuclear detonation, and that's just simply not the case. I'm not the most well versed on the fallout and the effects of U-235 enriched that level and everything else, but what I do know is that that's not necessarily true. Okay, that it's not going to detonate in the way that people are looking at and thinking. And if anything, the major risk is what Trump just stated, with that dust from the uranium after it gets hit, kind of, or being used as a dirty bomb per se. The actual problem is when people start breathing that in, and that uranium actually gets within the system, and then you start causing those issues inside of people. So while it's in the ground, while it's being contained in those locations, and you hit it with those different busters, your idea is essentially that you're destroying the facility and burying it at the same time, so that dust doesn't get out.
Let me
or at least
sorry,
it's
just had a
minimized.
small glitch there. Yeah, Hazem, I know you've been waiting patiently. I'm going to go to you, and then I'm going to go to Doc for a question. But Hazem, I'll let you go to your point, and then I'll ask a question to Doc.
I want to make a quick point regarding the Megatron. Actually, I see Myron has posted something on there. I know usually it's limited access for the big Megatron, but I can engage on this. Myron is making a claim that Israel is suppressing free media in Haifa because of the coverage of the missiles and the damage caused by the missiles. And I need to address this because, and Noe actually can speak even better on the issue. but you do not want to provide Iran with battle damage assessment. This is the sorry, but you cannot provide Iran with missile strike locations. At the end of the day, they're technologically not advanced enough to properly guide
I
their
agree.
missiles
Me and Matt just
outside
talked
of
about this.
ongoing BDA. And this is
Here's
what's
the thing, dude.
happening.
Me and Matt agree. We talked about this already. We agreed on that one.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was not here. I'm back and forth. The other issue I wanted to respond to Myron about from a while ago. Myron makes a point that the U.S. or nobody should go to war because there are risks associated with war. That's not how decisions to engage in combat are taken. You make that decision based on the benefit versus risks, not the pure risks of. If that was the case,
Hazem, you're cutting off.
Sorry,
Can I go real quick? Because
yeah.
I got my thought here that I was trying to say before. So basically, Trump's been on it for years. People are saying that, oh, he's been talking about this forever. But here's the thing people need to understand. That's propaganda. And today, or it was 24 hours ago, Charlie Kirk, Crowder, Benny Johnson, a bunch of other super pro MAGA people came out and said, hey, look, Trump's been saying this consistently. And they all kind of did it in a coordinated fashion. Why? Because Trump knows that half of his base is going to get pissed as hell if he goes to war. You got Candace Owens, Tucker, Dave Smith, Nick Fuentes, Scott Horton, guys like me, even Steve Bannon are all against the war towards Iran. So Trump needs to start kind of finding a way to salvage this and come up with a narrative that the MAGA base will accept to some degree. That's why they're running with the story that he's been
So
saying this for a
Myron,
long time.
let me leverage that. Doc was reacting. Doc, we have you all the time on Spaces on the political sense. The talking points were sent out, which was President Trump has been consistent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You, on the other hand,
It's
seeing
like a
that you do
script.
not, Doc does, you feel like, Doc, you agree with Myron that no new wars, and this is a new war, and maybe a betrayal of America first?
Myron and I, we spend time together in so many spaces. I agree largely with what he's saying. And I've said publicly that if Trump, I understand why Trump is providing defensive assistance to Israel right now. But that doesn't equate it's not the equivalent of joining in the attack, which is clearly what Israel wants. You see billboards now going up around Israel, giant billboards asking Trump to get involved in the war. And I think that's why Bibi, blew up the negotiating table by this preemptive attack on Iran, is because Trump didn't want to do that. And so far, Trump hasn't jumped in with both feet. I think that Trump would lose a big part of the MAGA base, and I would be one of them. I've said publicly that I would disavow Trump if he went to war. Look, there are no good people that are leading countries here, right? That you can always demonize a leader, including, and I'll do it with Trump. And now Tucker, some of his most stringent supporters are calling him out on this because it's against the principles upon which he's always run. Right, that the famous CNN interview at the start of his campaign where he told Caitlin Collins, I just want people to stop dying related to Ukraine. And I believe that. And I believe those principles should apply in the case of the Zionists in Israel. They're a toxic presence. This is in furtherance, this attack is in furtherance of Bibi's Greater Israel Project. And he's been saying since 1992 and every year since 2012 that Iran is a year away from a nuclear bomb. Iran has been largely compliant with IAEA inspections. I just went and grokked it. Grok mentions that they're basically largely compliant, but there have been some questions and some issues. So, Israel doesn't allow inspections of their nuclear program. They don't even acknowledge that they have nukes. We all know that they do, and we know that they stole them from the U.S., along with the Zionist spies that now present themselves in Congress and Senate and are defending the notion that we should go to war, that it's a just war at this point, to keep another country from having what we have, and not just from what we have, but from 6 or 7 countries, other countries also have. So go to war to stop a war, it's insanity. And if Trump does it, if Trump starts to attack Israel, then I'm out. out 1,000%. So yeah, I agree with Myron.
So let me go to Ryan, because just to follow up on this point, I want to kind of go through this. So Ryan, go ahead.
Well, just earlier when they were talking about the strikes, it's more of a Fukushima situation than a Chernobyl situation. It's not going to set off a fission reaction and go kaboom, but you would spread radioactive material to about a 25-mile radius. That was an earlier point being made. I agree with what Jock just said too. I mean, they've been pushing this rhetoric for decades, and it wasn't a coincidence. Like just so happened after Al Qaeda takes over Syria, which they assisted, and everything's in line, and then Iran was next. It was just like right down the script. It wasn't like suddenly, oh, now they're really gonna get the bomb this time. It's like Charlie Brown kicking the football. They're there to disable Iran's ability to support resistance to Israel's regional ambitions of land annexation and murdering their neighbors, which they've done from their inception to the present day.
I agree 100% with that one. And Doc,
Yeah, it's
Wait,
always
wait,
the
wait,
blood.
wait. Okay, I'm gonna
This is
let.
it,
Wait,
Ryan.
wait, wait,
This
wait,
is
wait,
it.
wait, 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 wait.
Come on.
Hold on. Ryan said his point.
Oi, there comes the convention. Oh, I had more points. But it's just like you got to go without taking a breath, because the moment you stop a sentence, they jump in. They don't do that to anyone else. Now you're going to hear this woman have a meltdown. She's going to call it like Jewish blood libel, and watch the screaming and pain as they beat you. She's going to say Iran's the one annexing territory. Really? And I wanted to reply so bad, and they wouldn't let it, allow it. So we're going to do it on here, but go ahead. This is going to be insufferable, but let's go.
I'll go to Voice to answer, and then Yehuda. Go ahead, Voice. I really don't want to go this rabbit hole, so quickly respond to it.
I really don't want to say this. Like, why don't I get to reply to their replies? Oh, we don't want that. I'm like, well, what is it? What are you directing? This is what it's about. They're attacking Iran because Iran supports the resistance against Israel's ethnic cleansing and land annexation. That's the actual war. Well, you're not allowed. That's not an allowable position. You have to frame it as they're secretly building a nuclear bomb and we went in there to get it. It's bullshit.
I also don't want to go this rabbit hole, Citrak,
Yeah.
but it seems like it slides
Yep.
without
Go ahead,
any
Voice.
problem, you know?
Listen to him. It's like, oh, yeah, totally agree with you. This is not a neutral host. This is a Zionist Hasbara outfit, and it's even worse when Mario is on there. When he gets his head out of Zelensky's ass, they put it up Bibi's ass. And this is why, it used to be one of the most popular Twitter spaces. And I have to stay up at like 3 a.m. to do these things.
It seems like it slides without any problem when we are in a space talking about Iran, and you have people coming up here describing the Jews as bloodthirsty who are just murdering children and trying to annex land.
What? Okay, do you see that sleight of hand? Suddenly, it's not Israel's regional ambitions and land annexation and ethnic cleansing. It's the Jews. Israel is not the Jews. But she went straight to that. Anti-Semitism, oy vey. I'm so tired of this shit. You cannot blame an ethnic group as if it's just like part of their DNA to behave this way. Israel is following rigid dogma where they think God granted them land based on a wrestling match. But she brought up the Jews. Nobody said the word Jew in this whole discussion. But this is how she has to paint it. Now, I don't get to jump in right away and go, hold on, you can't accuse people of anti-Semitism. Nobody said this about Jews. It's like, no. They mute my mic.
When zero land was annexed by Israel. And when again,
the only land that's been annexed is by Israel.
And I managed to mention it yesterday. The Iranian regime has managed to annex the entire southern Lebanon and Syria and Iraq.
No. Shia got power in Iraq thanks to Bush, the lesser. Israel annexed land in Syria, physically sitting in Syria annexing land. They tried to go to the Litani River in Lebanon. They've annexed and are annexing the West Bank, and they've destroyed Gaza. Iran hasn't annexed anything, but they always claim to be the victim. Like, they not only lie, they accuse you of their own actions. Always guilty of their own accusations.
Okay, there is no way around it. If you look at the map, if you look at the geography, this is the Iranian regime who is expanding. And Khamenei, in many of his speeches, and Khomeini before him, has said that their inspiration is to get an Islamic republic throughout the entire Middle East. If anybody have greater inspiration for becoming a greater land,
that is true about Al-Qaeda, which Israel supported. Israel supported Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which becomes ISIS in Syria, fully supported them. They want a caliphate, da-da-da-da-da. They don't mind these Gulf Arabs, because as long as you bend the knee to Israel, they don't care what you do with your oil or anything else. As long as you give it to them, as long as you allow them to get the land that they think is granted to them by God, that Yahweh said, you can have this. It's yours. It's your promised land. They call themselves the Jewish state. That doesn't make it so. Like, this woman can't complete a sentence without lying.
and annexing land, this is the Iranian regime.
Iran has not annexed any land.
And I just love it.
Is it Iran that's building Persian-only settlements? They just go in and bulldoze down Jewish houses and replace them with Persians and say, this is Iranian land. God gave it to us. Is the West Bank doing that? Do they go into Israel and burn farms and shoot kids and set houses on fire and smash them with bulldozers and come in with settlers and build, ethnic colonies? Oh, no, wait. That's Israel doing that. They're building Jewish-only settlements in the West Bank and have been for decades. They're annexing land, not to mention the Nakba that took all the land that they're sitting on in the first place. Iran didn't do that. Israel did that. But of course, the projection. Oi, you're doing what we did. It's like gold in my ear. We can never forgive the Arabs for forcing us to kill their children. You can never forgive yourself for killing children. You didn't have to kill any children. You're killing them because you want a majority Jewish demographic. Because in your mind, you're all from some bloodline. Even you're a bunch of trans Semites with blue eyes claiming to be ancient Hebrews returning from 3,000 years ago. And you murder kids. You're murdering aid workers right now. I wish the beginning of this space had gotten on. It's what they do. As soon as I brought up stuff on Gaza, they're like, oh no, let's not talk about that. It's Iran. Like, it's related. If you wanted peace with the Houthis, then you have to end the occupation in Gaza. No, they want a narrow thing and keep the frame. And this woman is just insufferable.
When they reverse engineer the entire talking points of terrorist regime coming here, calling us Zionist, which is a curse word.
She reverse engineered the whole thing and said Iran's annexing land and they're the terrorists. The Israelis are the terrorists. Israelis are committing acts of terrorism. What was the pager attack? Blowing up a bunch of nurses and things. That's an act of terrorism. Bombing Beirut and killing thousands of civilians. That's an act of terrorism. Carpet bombing Khan Yunis in Gaza City. That's an act of terrorism. Shooting journalists. That's an act of terrorism. Blowing up hospitals with people in them. That's an act of terrorism. Israelis are terrorists. They just shoot kids for sport before October 7th. March for Peace. Shooting people in the head. Snipers. Just shooting unarmed civilians who are protesting occupation. Bang. That's an act of terrorism. Setting their homes on fire and their farms and mowing the lawn and mowing over their property and replacing it. That's terrorism. Putting cages around their houses in Hebron. That's an act of terrorism. You are terrorists. Iran did none of that. They don't have racial colonies in Iran. They don't have separate laws for their group and then all the goy in Iran. They don't segregate the schools and highways and have color-coded license plates of who can be on this road and who cannot. That's Israel. Israel's a racial apartheid. Israel is a terrorist state. And she always reverse engineered, like everything she said they're guilty of. It's unbelievable. And I think She believes it.
By terror regimes.
Zionist.
This is the wording. This is the rhetoric that you are
Zionist.
using.
Okay, whoa.
Zionism is a slur. Zionism is Jewish supremacy with the land grab. And it's real. Oh, no, yeah, it's like, oh, you're using Nazi as a slur. Boo-hoo. Fuck you. Fuck you, Nazi. Fuck you, Zionist.
Whoa.
For you,
Stop.
that's
You're a
very,
Zionist.
very
you started
low-hanging.
Stop. Let
Here he
voice
mute.
finish. And if
Here he mutes.
somebody, if she's saying not to use it, don't. And if we're going to start doing this, like, I have no problem kicking people out. There's going to be a 12 to 14 hour space. I'm not here for the bullshit.
All she just said was bullshit. And you can't just declare, oh, you can't say that to me. I'm like, okay, you can't call Iran terrorist then. Like, oh, let's police the speech here.
I can understand passion gets high. I can understand people get it. Got it. People are going to get heated. That's fine. But like, if the line is crossed, kicking you out, I'm not dealing with it. Now, Voice, finish your point. But I do have some breaking news, Voice. But I want you to finish your point, and then I'm going to share this breaking news. Go ahead, Voice, quickly.
Yeah, I will just finish up quickly. It doesn't insult me. It's just that it's always people that are not from this region who are using this rhetoric. While people from this region, when you have James, when you have a...
You never been there. Here, it's, and I have been there, but like, you never been.
When you have other people here on stage, Nirvana from Egypt, we always try to find some sort of an agreement within our differences. And then coming people from outside that have never been to this region and always try to push this propaganda. Myron was just saying that people are fleeing Israel, for example. The airport here is closed. You have 150,000 Israelis trying to go back to Israel. This is total propaganda, and this is the exact points of the Iranian regime. You guys are releasing pictures from the Ukraine-Russia war, claiming that this is Israel getting bombed. This is the problem that I have with you guys. Don't like Israel, don't support Israel, but let's have a fucking intelligence discussion for a matter, instead of sitting here and just spreading out fake news and talking in terrorist rhetoric. This is...
So I haven't posted anything from the Ukraine war or any fake news, or she's pushing terrorist rhetoric. How can you say, like, you're supporting Israel? Israel shoots kids, right? They murder babies. They're terrorists. And there's just no hiding that. There's 2 years of it. They post it themselves. They celebrate it. Bassem Youssef had a great speech. I'll go try and dig it up. But he was saying, like, it doesn't matter. You have witnesses on the ground. Oh, their optic nerve is anti-Semitic. You know, so you got the World Bank coming and say, oh, yeah, we don't believe that source. It doesn't matter. Oh, Al Jazeera, oh, they're just getting paid. It's Qatar. Da, da, da. Whatever you say. They just deny. And, of course, he's not going to let me respond.
Just bullshit.
So, the breaking
All right,
news.
can I respond to that real quick?
Do I get to reply?
Breaking news. Hold on.
No.
Enough. Okay, because I want to go back to the breaking news. Okay, so I did see what, Matt, thank you very much for sharing this, up on the nest, and the Iranian police headquarters was targeted in Tehran.
Third time right after I spoke. Oh, wait, we got some breaking stuff.
Again, interesting regime stability. But the breaking news is that per NetBlocks, which is probably the gold standard, indicates a total collapse of internet in Iran. There is an internet blackout right now in Iran. Let me say that again. There's an internet blackout in Iran. So I want to analyze this from a military perspective. Matt, you're my guy. Matt.
And he wants to go to Matt. Oh, don't let Ryan reply to this bitch saying Jewish blood libel, blah, blah, blah.
What do you believe? Either there's two options for this, Matt. Either an Israeli strike or multiple strikes managed to do this, or
do I get to reply to what she said, or I'm leaving?
No, let it go, man.
I think he should just leave then.
They
Because
didn't annex any
trying to
land
move
and she equated Israel with the Jews.
Ryan, hold on. Like, this is the breaking news. Just give me a second.
Yeah, no, I'm out.
Okay, bye. Goodbye. If that's how you guys are going to act, like I really don't care, and I don't have the patience. I've been here for 6 days.
Well, in all fairness, bro.
How are you going to act what? She's making accusations and saying we're supporting terrorists and spouting out terrorist propaganda and saying, essentially saying you're anti-Semitic because you're blaming this on Jews when no one did that. But I don't get to defend my position or reply to her bullshit. And it's clear he did. He's like, I'm going to go to Matt, and then I'm going to go to this person. I'm going to do this. That's what he did before. Had the Stu Peters show right afterward. I told them that. I said, I got a hard out at 11:30. Why don't I get to reply? Well, that's how you're going to be. What do you mean, how are you going to be? What, telling the truth? Explaining that Israel commits acts of terrorism and has been? That this is not about a nuclear bomb? That this has been on the script for decades? That's very verifiable and easy to prove. But that's not their narrative, and that's not why they do these spaces. They do these spaces for damage control.
Like, she made some accusations and we couldn't respond.
Okay.
And you guys have spoken a lot. Let him go on.
There's a lot of things you guys have said that I've responded to that I just let go.
Jesus fucking Christ. We have an internet blackout in Iran. Matt, please provide the explanation for why that might be. Either one, do you believe an Israeli operation that managed to do this? Or two, do you believe that this was the Islamic Republic in Iran that instituted an internet blackout? And analyzing it from each situation, why do you think it is, Matt?
Yeah, so from the Israeli perspective, having the internet turned on is a good thing for the reasons I stated earlier about, being able to see effects on the ground to everything else. And I also brought up the information operation, analyzing the human terrain, the effects it's going to have on the population and everything else, right? So as far as Israelis are concerned, having that internet turned on is a good thing. Additionally, if Israel take place to where they have
fomenting rebellion or regime change, that internet is vital for the opponents of the regime. And there was news out of Iran on an Iranian channel that the IRG, or the government of Iran, ordered Iranians to go.
Fuck that, dude. Accusations of anti-Semitism will get you fucking canceled. Like, you will not be able to work anywhere. If you're in college, you'll be thrown out of it. I'm looking at entropy real fast. You can lose your job. But these people are like, oh no, we're going to say this. People are dying. We're in the middle of war because you won't allow an honest discussion about it. I'm talking about ethnic cleansing, and it's not like to hurt Jews' feelings. It's because it's true. They are bombing people. They did it yesterday. They killed 11 this morning, 64 yesterday. People in line to get food who are only starving to death because Israel won't allow the aid in. They let it trickle in so they can use it as bait to murder people when they go to receive it. That is terrorism. Oh, you can't pin them down like, are you shooting Palestinians in line for food? No, we're not going to go there. Anything you bring up, oh no, we can't go there. You can only talk about it in the way we framed it, of this fictitious crap of, oh, they're just trying to prevent a nuclear weapon. And so we're just going to go over whether the internet's on or off or whatever, and let some bitch say all the bullshit she just said. And like, oh, just let it go. I don't jump in when you say things. And like, because you can't. You will get waxed. There is no defending what Israel's doing and what Israel has already done. Oh, I don't want a history lesson. Well, let's not talk about Gaza. Let's not talk about aiding Al-Qaeda in Syria. Let's not talk about lying about the war in Iraq or Libya. Oh yeah, but this one's real. History matters. This isn't ancient. These are the same people. Netanyahu lived through all of that. He wrote a book about it. He went to Congress and got standing ovations with his shit. And now Trump is going to capitulate and attack Iran. Oh, fuck them all. And they wonder, I'm like, the reason I don't do these spaces is because I got to stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning and then wait like an hour to talk, get like 3 sentences out. Then you allow a whole panel to do rebuttals, but then I don't get to reply to that. That's not a discussion. They're not concerned with what's going on. It's just Hasbara rhetoric. They're trying to justify what Israel's doing. Fuck these people. I'm going to Telegram. Peace.